synthesizers that changed the way we hear today's modern music.
Well, I remember old Bob. He was always tinkering around with electronics. I didn't understand what he was doing, but boy, he sure did come a long way.
We all may not know the Moog by name, but by the time you're finished viewing and listening to this program, you might be able to consider yourself somewhat of a Moog expert. Dr. Robert Moog has been making synthesizers since the mid-1950s in one form or another, the first being a theremin.
What's a theremin?
A theremin is an instrument that you play without even touching it. It looks like a box with two antennas sticking out of it, one horizontally and one vertically.
How do you play it?
Well, moving your hand closer to the vertical antenna changes the pitch, while your other hand controls the volume with the horizontal antenna. It sounds kind of like this.
Wow, that sounds like a spaceship.
It does. That's because the theremin has been used for UFO sound effects since the 1950s. But enough about theremins. Let's start talking about the synthesizers that made Bob Moog famous. The Moog synthesizer has been a staple in post-production and music studios since they were first introduced in the 1960s. What's that? Oh no, sorry little fella. When George Lucas decided to make his sound effects, he used an ARP 2600. Anyways, R2, we're going to talk more today about how the Moog has been used in music. When most people think of synthesizers, they think of all-in-one instruments that are programmed by pushing buttons, turning knobs, or pushing sliders. However, that is not the way it all began. The first synthesizers were modular in that they were a group of modules that each performed a separate function. For example, one module called an oscillator produced a waveform, sawtooth, sine, pulse, etc. And another, the amplifier, modified the amplitude or volume of the waveform. Some of the more famous fingers that played this instrument were Dennis DeYoung from STYX, Mick Jagger, Dick Hyman, Wendy Carlos, and Vince Clarke. And if you happen to have some spare change laying around, you just might be able to pick one of these up for about $15,000 to $20,000 on eBay. One of the most popular Moogs of all time is called the Mini-moog. The Mini-moog was basically a cut-down version of the Moog modular, at about 1/4 the size. The Mini-moog featured 3 voltage-controlled oscillators, a mixer, noise source, VCA, and a warm resonant filter which could be controlled with a dedicated EG called a contour generator. The Mini also had external input which allowed external signals to be processed through the filter. Some of the more famous fingers that played this instrument are ABBA, Devo, Thomas Dolby, Kraftwerk, Beastie Boys, Beck, Chemical Brothers, Fatboy Slim, and the list goes on and on.
Communication. Shouldn't that be a beautiful and inspiring thing?
Although MIDI, musical instrument digital interface, had not been invented yet, electronic instruments communicated through the use of S-triggers and control voltage. This enabled the first electronic sequencing. One group from Germany made great use of this communication. That was Kraftwerk. This group performed almost solely off of sequences and live vocals, and inadvertently created the robot dance. Somewhere between Kraftwerk and the invention of MIDI, Gary Newman recalls finding an abandoned Mini-moog in the studio where recording his Pleasure Principle album. He decided to add the synth bass to the electric bass. Might this have been the added edge his song needed to be a hit? Different artists use the Moog in different ways. Some use it for sweeps and dynamics, while others use it for thick bass. And some just use it for strict computer noise. Although many attempts have been made trying to recreate these classic analog synthesizers in a digital format, nothing will truly compare to the original, except maybe for one. Moog has recently re-released the Mini-moog, now with MIDI capabilities. Although still monophonic, this synth is endorsed by some of the best. If you catch yourself watching Late Night with David Letterman, you will see a Mini-moog Voyager in Paul Schaefer's synth arsenal. These sell for about $3,300, so whether it's music or sound effects, keep your ears open. You might just be hearing a Moog.
For more information on Moog or Moog products, go to BigBriar.com or SynthMuseum.com.
This has been a Stereo Shop production.